Hi there, it's Tracy Kierden, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a turkey. He's hanging out on a farm pumpkin patch scene, fall leaves flying in the air. I'm going to demonstrate this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and let's go over brushes and colors. So I'll be using 3 different brushes for this. The two on the right are the Princeton Velvetouch brushes, and this one is a Royal Majestic brush. This is a number 12 bright brush. And these two are the 3/4 flat brush and the number 4 round brush. You don't have to use these exact sizes, you can use similar sizes. There are 10 colors for this, but you can simplify the color palette if you need to. These are Liquitex Basics paints, Cad Orange Hue, Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, light olive green. This is a color you can take out. I only use this in the back part of the green area to make it lighter. You can just add white to your dark green to make that lighter. Light blue violet is what I used in the sky. If you want to use a different blue for the sky, you can. Mars black, that's a color you likely don't want to take that out. We need that dark color. Phthalo blue for the head area of our turkey. Titanium white, that's also a color you definitely need. We use a lot of white. Raw sienna. Cad Red Deep, you can use different red. If you have a different red, that's fine. And raw umber. Basically with the browns, you just need like a light brown and a dark brown. And I used a piece of chalk to draw the turkey, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So you need to place your canvas in a horizontal position. Get a fresh cup of water, dip your brush in the water, kind of tap it dry, and then you want to load your brush in both light blue violet and titanium white. You're kind of mixing the two together equally, but I like to create color variations, so I like to let it kind of blend on the canvas. So I'm not mixing it all the way on my palette. That's just my style. And I'm just basically, this is really simple. We're just filling up the canvas right now, but we're going to leave about an inch gap on the bottom edge of the canvas. So don't go all the way down, leave a little bit of space on the bottom. Big paint strokes going in angled directions, and I'm not even blending this a certain way on purpose. Sometimes I like to make the sky a little bit lighter towards the bottom and dark at the top. That creates a little bit of perspective in the sky. But really for this, I'm just doing a very, very basic background. So just the blue and the white blending together, filling that area just to get that white canvas filled up. And like I said, you're just going to go all the way down, but leave about an inch gap at the bottom. This is a relatively thin layer of paint. If you need to add just a little bit of water to the brush to kind of boost it, to get it to flow better, you can. You just don't want the paint to end up dripping, so not too much water. So when you're done with that, go ahead and rinse your brush off and load your palette with 2 greens. So you have your light green, your dark green. So the light green is the light olive green, the dark green is the Hooker's green, and then you need some white. You don't need to wait for your background to completely dry. However, the bottom area, if you want to just make sure that bottom area is dry, dry it really quick with a blow dryer or wait for it all to dry, you can. We just don't want that blue to mix in right here. And basically, I'm going to do light green and white, and I am about 2 inches from the bottom of the canvas, maybe 2.5. I really just estimated that. We're just doing a green kind of grassy layer down here where our turkey will be standing. And for this, I'm going to make my grass area dark at the bottom. So I'm going to use the Hooker's Green Hue at the bottom. I'm going to use that lighter green at the top, and I'm just going to blend them together gently so that the bottom's dark, top is light. I'm doing big kind of left and right, almost kind of curved strokes. It's a little bit of a hill, although it doesn't have to be a hill. It could be completely flat if you want it to be flat. We're just filling this area in and blending it very gently. We'll do grass texture on here later, but for now we just want to fill this area. I'm going to do just a little bit extra white right at the top. So when you add lighter colors in the distance, that creates a little bit of perspective, and the bottom part of your land is darker. When I measured mine, it's a little bit higher in the middle, so it's a little bit of a hill, like I said, and that is about 2.5 inches from that center point to that little bit of a incline. But again, that can be estimated, so you just need at least 2 inches, enough room for your turkey and your little fence and pumpkins. When you're done with that, you need to let everything dry because we're going to draw the turkey. We can't draw on wet paint, so you want to make sure everything's dry. I'm going to draw this with a piece of chalk. I'm going to start by drawing the head, and I'm in the upper left kind of quadrant of the sky. I'm going to do kind of an arc shape for the top of his head. I'm going to turn this into kind of a hook shape going down and then up. So that's the length of his neck inside of his body. And then I'm going to go down and do a little beak. It's kind of angled diagonally. And then this wattle, kind of curvy, wavy, organic shape that kind of goes down along the side of his neck. And then I'm going to continue his neck down to the front part of his body. So this part right here is very rounded. So I'm going to just do slow, very slow sketch-like. And then side wing is going to go kind of a teardrop shape on the side, and it's angling down. Then I'm going to extend this line over here to his side wing. Make the side wing a little bit bigger. Actually kind of made this end part of the wing flat. And then we're going to start doing that big tail that kind of fans out. So I'm going to start by doing kind of a line over here on the left. This one's a little bit too big. I'm using a baby wipe to erase, by the way. If you use a wipe, just make sure you use it very lightly. Don't press too hard or you're going to lift your layers of paint. Little diagonal line right here for the end part of his tail. I'm going to take this and do a big kind of curve around to make this, it's almost like a fan on the back of his body. And then these diagonal lines are going to create the feathers of the tail. So these are the in-between lines of the feathers. So these are all going diagonally and going outwards, also like a fan. And then on the end, the outside edge of that main shape, I'm going to do little half circle arc shapes going around, and that's going to get the edging of the turkey's tail feathers. Just going over his side wing a bit, kind of cleaning this up. That side wing is a large shape. And then legs. Every time I do birds, I want to do very, very simple legs. So just do two little bumps on the bottom for where the legs are coming out, and then diagonal lines, and then the little kind of other diagonal lines for the claws. Little tiny circle for the eye, right in kind of the center part of the head. I'm just adjusting this kind of neck area, making sure that shape is defined. When we paint this, we don't have to stay inside the lines. We can adjust this when we paint. But that is it for the basic drawing portion of our turkey. And we are going to start painting it in. I am going to load my palette with the colors Mars Black, Raw Umber, which is a really dark brown, Phthalo Blue, and Cad Red Deep. You'll also need Raw Sienna, but I'm not going to load that onto my palette just yet. I'm going to use my number 12 bright brush and double load it in black and dark brown. I'm going to water it down just slightly. So this whole area back here, this body part of the turkey, so behind the side wing and under the tail, all of this is going to be painted this really dark brown for the first layer. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my flat brush and just kind of outlining the shape and just kind of filling it in the direction of that shape. I'm going to do the head partially blue, so I'm going to go up. Actually, I'm going to go and paint the entire head with this first layer black, or this first dark brown layer. So everything, including the head and behind the side wing, is going to be painted this dark brown. I am going to paint over that little circle that I drew for the eye. I'm using the end of the bristles to outline that shape and then fill it in. If you find it hard to do these rounded edges with the flat brush, you can switch to the round brush. Sometimes it's easier to do rounded edges with a round brush, and then you can switch back and forth and do the bigger areas with the flat brush. Took that brown under this side wing, but not all the way. I just kind of stopped on the bottom right area of it. We're going to paint the side wing next, and we want to dip our brush without rinsing it, dip it in some white, and start painting the shape of that wing. It's going to look like a light kind of brownish gray color because you have black and brown on your brush and now you're introducing white into it. And we actually need to load our paint palette with the color Raw Sienna. And then without rinsing your brush, load your brush into Raw Sienna and start continuing to paint that wing. So I'm kind of dragging my paint strokes outwards. This is going to kind of create the like the direction that the feathers would be going. So we're painting it by dragging our paint strokes out, kind of in a horizontal direction. These are kind of going curved and diagonally up down here. So it almost goes outward. It almost fans out a little bit outwards. And then your darker colors blend a little bit. So you have some dark areas in that side wing, but they don't blend all the way. So we have some streaks of black in there as well. We're going to start painting his tail feathers, and we're going to also use this light brown for this. So I still have that black brown combination on my brush. I didn't rinse, and now I'm just loading it into that Raw Sienna, that light brown color. So I am going to, so I started by just painting each individual feather, but actually it's easier just to kind of use the end of your brush to outline that curve. So you have that shape of that fan. So that's all outlined. so that we have that shape, and then we can go in and we can start filling these in. And I am going to do, I'm dragging my paint strokes, but the direction is going to change depending on what part of this kind of fanned area I'm at. See how the direction changes, the angle of it goes with where that curve is. These angles are changing direction. And it's just the light brown, and we have streaks of that dark brown in there. If you didn't get those dark brown streaks in there, you can load your brush in a little bit of that dark brown and then go back and do some dark brown streaks. So you have light brown streaks, dark brown streaks, and it's not filled in all the way yet. I still see some of that sky going through that shaped area, and that's okay. Next, I'm going to go in, and remember how we drew those curved kind of arcs on the end of this shape? I'm going to paint those in now. So I'm actually loading my brush in that darker brown color. I still have that light brown on my brush, so it's still grabbing some of that to whatever's on the brush. But this is a little arc that I'm painting on each little kind of individual feather. So I paint the arc, and then I drag my brush down. So paint the arc, and then drag your brush down in that direction, of that kind of angled direction that we sort of started already. I'm going to keep doing this all around that fanned part of that turkey's tail feathers. Curve and drag. If we still have a little bit of background showing through, that is actually okay. It doesn't need to be completely solid. Curve and drag, and then when we get to here, these ones are shorter, smaller. I'm going to go in, and there's kind of a gap going on down here, so I'm actually going to use a dark color. So this is just the black and brown, so very, very dark. So on the base of the tail feather, I'm taking this and using the full width of the brush, and I'm dragging it up into each of the tail feathers. So the base of these tail feathers is dark. Dragging it up. Don't want to cover all of that. I like that light brown that's still kind of showing through. But now I don't have that gap of blue sky showing through. Now it looks like his tail is actually attached to his body. Next, I'm going to paint his head partially blue. If you want, you can leave it brown if you don't want to add the blue, but I think the blue adds some really pretty color to our turkey. And let me use my number 4 round brush for this because it's a smaller area we're going to paint in. So we already have a first layer on this, and ideally that dark brown should be dry. If it's wet, it's going to mix in too much with our blue and kind of smear it. So we want to make sure that it's pretty dry. And this is, again, number 4 round brush. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my phthalo blue, and it's going to lighten that blue, and it's also going to allow it to stand out. So I'm going to do these kind of little feathered paint strokes. So these are like little curved paint strokes, and my intention is not to cover up all of that first dark layer. I'm going to allow some of it to still show through. I'm going to go down with this blue about right here. And these paint strokes are curving, and that's going to give my neck a little bit of form. So curved paint strokes all down the neck. I'm going to leave the left side kind of dark and shadowy, so I'm not really going to add blue on the far left part where that shadowy part is. But I'm going to go back with white and do this kind of like wet on wet blending thing with the white, doing more of these kind of curved strokes on the right side of the neck. Little curved paint strokes. It's going to give that little bit of brightness on the right side, but leaving the left side dark and shadowy. Then I'm going to rinse my brush and do the wattle. So this is Cad Red Deep and a rinse number 4 round brush. And I'm just going to paint that little kind of shape that I drew earlier with chalk. Start under that head area and it kind of waves down. and adding a little bit of white in there to highlight it. You want to do little curved strokes that blend, but not all the way. I'm going to rinse my brush and paint his beak next. So rinse that, kind of squeeze the water out so it's not dripping. Load that into the raw sienna, and right here, I know that's not a good angle for the camera, but basically that little triangle is what I painted, and it's kind of angling downward. Without rinsing my brush, I'm going to load it into the dark brown color and do the little bottom parts over here where his legs are. So two little kind of curved bumps down here. So that was dark brown, and it mixed a little bit with that raw sienna. Then I'm going to take that raw sienna and do the little legs. Keep it simple. Little diagonal line, and then I did 4 little diagonal lines with the toe kind of going outwards the opposite direction. If it's not showing up, you can take a little bit of white and go back over that or mix that so it shows up. You can also go back with a darker color. I'm going to let that dry and maybe kind of outline that later to make the legs a little bit more defined. I'm going to add feather texture onto the turkey next, and I'm going to completely rinse the brush off and get raw sienna and titanium white. So here's my raw sienna, add a little bit of white to it. It's going to turn into a relatively light kind of golden brown color. And I'm going to start under like the front chest area, and I'm going to do these curved strokes. So we want to add this kind of texture, but we don't want to cover all that first layer. So I'm just doing little curved strokes down front part of the chest area, and then curved strokes go in the opposite direction along the back of his neck and the back of his back. And then right here, more curved strokes, but these are curving this way. I'm kind of lightly holding my brush. It's almost like I'm doing this dry brush style. I'm doing kind of light marks, but again, not covering that first dark layer, going back over these ones. We need that dark layer to still show, and that helps with that texture effect that we're getting. Next, I'm going to add some more texture color on the tail feathers. So I'm going to load my paint palette with some more titanium white, and we need the raw sienna and titanium white combination again. Get some more raw sienna onto my paint palette using the number 4 round brush. So I'm going to double load in that light brown and the white. I am going to go on the end of his tail feathers here, but not on the very, very end of it. So like there's a little gap. And I'm just doing another set of these curved arc lines on each of those. So when we painted those arc lines, we kind of defined where each tail feather is. Little curved line on each of the tail feathers. Then I'm going to load my brush in white. So this is going to be lighter than what I just did. And kind of in the mid part of each of those tail feathers, I'm going to do another set of little curved lines on each tail feather. Next, I'm going to make more curved marks between the 2 sets of marks that I made. So like right here, but I am doing these very lightly. I'm not pressing hard on my brush. I'm just barely letting that touch the surface of the canvas, dry brushing these light colored, so it's raw sienna and titanium white, and they don't have to have an equal amount. It's just little curved dry brush lines in between both sets. I'm going to add a little bit of dark to my brush just to kind of make sure that these little lines are not too bright. So I'm just doing kind of these light gray diagonal lines, and they're going from the bottom, the base of those tail feathers, and I'm just sketching those outwards. It's important to know that this turkey painting is not, we're not trying to render a realistic turkey. It's more of a stylized and a stylized style of turkey. The strokes are more expressive and loose. What we're going to do next is we're going to paint the side wing. So we're going to kind of do the same thing that we did with everything else. We're going to use a lighter color to kind of go back and do our feather strokes with it. So without rinsing the brush, grab your raw sienna on it, and if you need to wipe off some of that black, you can. So raw sienna. I'm going to start kind of in the upper left area of this side wing, and I'm going to do small kind of curved paint strokes. So these little curved strokes on the top. A little bit of white to my brush as well to kind of get this to stand out. Down here, curved strokes that are kind of going down at an angle, but we're leaving that kind of brown layer still showing through. These are going out of the lines of this wing, and that's kind of the point. So these are kind of going outside that shape. So what I did more raw sienna on the top and then kind of lighter color on the bottom. Little dashed curved lines to fill in his side wing. The next thing I'm going to do is paint his eyes. I'm going to rinse my brush off all the way and load the very end of the bristles into black. And then right here in the center part of his head, we're going to just do a little black dot or a little black circle for the eye. Then I'm going to take my black and do a little bit of outlining on his beak. So I outlined the outer edge of it and a line down the middle. And now I'm just kind of loosely outlining his legs, just adding kind of that dark line on that, kind of gets that to stand out a little bit better. I'm going to dry my painting really quick and use that baby wipe to gently lift any leftover chalk. You can also use a clean wet paintbrush for this. If you are using the wipe, make sure you're not pressing super hard. You don't want to lift any layers of paint, but I am just cleaning this all up and getting all that chalk lifted up. And now that the black part of the eye is dry, I'm going to do a little white dot on the inside of that black circle. So I'm going to rinse the brush and do a little tiny bit of white right on the end of the bristles, little dot. And then I'm going to do a little curve on the very, very bottom part of that eye. I'm going to take the white that's still on my brush and just do a little bit of highlighting on the top part of the beak and the top part of the head. And then I'm going to take this and kind of do a white line in between the tail feathers, just very loosely. So that kind of divides up those tail feathers a little bit better with that white paint, very, very loosely, very thin lines. Next, I'm going to take my white and do an outline on the top part of the eye, and that's what it looks like. I pretty much just outlined the entire eye with white so that it helps that eye to stand out a little bit better. So we are pretty much done with painting the turkey. The next fun thing we're going to do is just kind of add all the other things that are in this painting, starting with the pumpkins that are going to be in the lower left part of this. So I'm going to start with a clean number 4 round brush and orange and white on my palette. These pumpkins are kind of cut off on the bottom, so I'm just doing kind of the top part of it. And with the pumpkins, I like to start in the middle with kind of an oval shape in the middle and do curved lines on the outside to form the shape of the pumpkin. So we're doing these white first just so the orange will show up nice and bright. Otherwise the orange would be a little bit too see-through if we just did orange first. I'm doing a second one over here. This one is going to be overlapping, or the other one's going to be overlapping it. They're just right next to each other. And you want to let that dry a little bit before doing your color layer next. While that's drying, I am going to start doing the grass texture. So I'm going to rinse the white off the brush, and I'm going to take the hooker's green, so that dark green color, and a little bit of water in there to kind of boost that up a little bit, kind of dry it out. A little bit of black in there as well is going to darken that green, and I like to loosen this paint just a bit with these little grass texture strokes. It's easier to work with kind of looser paint than it is thicker paint. And that paint is right there on the end of my bristles, and I'm just stroking upwards. I'm going to start around his feet, and the little grass blades are going to kind of sway opposite directions on both sides of his feet. So ideally, we want our grass blades to be little and smaller, kind of higher up in the painting, closer to the sky. And if we're working closer to the ground, our grass blades are taller. Again, adding that little bit of water in there helps really to kind of thin that paint down. You get more control over it, and you can create those thinner lines. And you're just using mostly the end of the bristles, stroking up in different angles. You can even add a little bit of raw sienna into your grass color to kind of make it get some nice color variation, some golden color in your grass. And you can decide if you want to fill the whole thing in with all this detailed grass texture, or if you just want to do little clusters of grass kind of here and there throughout your area. That's kind of up to you. When we're done with painting the grass, rinse your brush off, and we're going to paint the pumpkins in orange next. So I'm actually going to mix orange with raw sienna, and in the center of the pumpkin, I'm going to start by painting that oval. It's actually not dry. I'm going to dry this really quick because too much of that white is mixing in with it. Sometimes it's a good thing to have our white mix in and you get some nice color variation, but I decided to just dry all of this really quick. And then paint the curved lines on the outside. You don't have to cover all of that white. If some of that white is still showing through, that's okay. So with these ones, I added a little bit more raw sienna to my brush, so it kind of looks a little bit different than the center oval. And then 2 more bumps. And we can outline this later to kind of make it stand out even better. So then I'm going to paint this pumpkin. So start with the center oval. I stroke down, starting from top to bottom and stroking down in a curved direction. So you can kind of decide how much orange or brown you want to mix into it. I'm going to have this pumpkin overlap the smaller pumpkin, so I'm just going to take these and I'm going to go over the smaller pumpkin. So then, without rinsing, I'm going to grab my dark color, it's brown and black combination that's on my palette, and I'm going to do the lines in between. So starting with the oval piece, just kind of outline. So I'm stroking down from top to bottom, those kind of curved strokes, but I'm not going down all the way. I'm just kind of loosely outlining that. So that kind of helps define the lines of those pumpkins. And we can use the same black and brown combination to do the stems of the pumpkins. So I'm just gonna paint them kind of a wide stem at the very top, and then it goes narrow and kind of twisty. So very simplified. We don't have to detail these pumpkins up unless you want to, but they're more cartoon-like than anything. Sometimes I could take the stem and kind of extend it down a little bit to do like a scalloped edge on the bottom, but that's pretty much it for the pumpkins. I'm actually also going to do a little bit of a highlights. I'm going to take white, rinse the brush, grab white, and just do a few kind of white marks towards the top of the pumpkins, and that gives it kind of that shiny look. And next I'm going to use a piece of chalk to draw in the fence. So there's a little country fence over here on the left. I'm going to do 3 posts, so 3 rectangles, and this is not going to be a perfect fence. It's going to be rustic and uneven. In fact, I'm making these ones kind of going at different angles on purpose. So we can make the fence go all the way across. I decided to just stop it on the left and not make it go to the right of the turkey, but you can change the style of the fence if you want to. And then I'm going to use the number 4 round brush to paint the fence in. So this is going to be a combination of all of our browns, our dark brown, our light brown, and we can use white and black. The only tricky thing with this is we don't want it to, if your fence is touching the turkey, you want to kind of change that color so it's not blending in too much with the turkey, and we'll kind of address that when we get there. But I'm going to start with, so I mixed the raw sienna and the raw umber together, added a little bit of white, and I'm just basically doing the posts first. The posts, I made them a little bit rounded at the top, but again, this is very cartoon-like. We don't have to make it look realistic. You can take some of your lighter colors and just do vertical strokes, blend it in, but just don't blend it in all the way. It gives it that kind of variation in color, kind of that faux wood look. So right here is kind of what I was talking about. We don't want this to look too much like the color of the turkey, so we want to just kind of make sure that we change that brown either darker or lighter. For the most part, it stands out enough because it's a lighter brown and we have kind of a dark outline on the edge of the turkey anyway, so we should be fine. I'm going to rinse and then get the dark color on my brush. I'm going to do a little bit of shadowing. So I'm just kind of dragging that dark color up from the bottom of the post up, and that gives that post a little bit more character. It's a little bit shadowy on the bottom, gives it that kind of more of that wood look. And then we can do our horizontal little posts. So I'm making these a little bit darker. And then you can decide how you want it to overlap, if you want it to slightly overlap one of the posts, or if you decide that you want them, all the vertical posts, to be all in front and overlapping. We don't see part of this horizontal piece. So I'm making these horizontal pieces kind of overlap these two posts. Then, without rinsing the brush, I'm gonna grab this green. There's brown on my brush still, but that's okay. And I'm gonna take this green, I'm gonna do little grass pieces on the bottom of the fence pieces, fence posts, and that's just gonna make it look like they are more in the ground and we have some grass overlapping. We are going to paint fall leaves next, which is optional. You don't have to do leaves flying everywhere. And there's going to be a random leaf up here, right here. That part got cut off in the filming of this, but basically we are just going to do a variety of colors with the leaves. I'm just going to do basic kind of curved, pointed shaped leaves. You could do this two ways. You can paint all of your leaves white first. Or you can do what I'm doing. I'm double loading my brush in white and orange. So that white is important because if you just do orange, it's not really going to be bright and show up against the blue sky. So you want to get that white in there so the orange would be nice and opaque. And you're just doing different colored falling leaves. It does add a really pretty kind of colorful element in the background of this painting. And you can do leaves that are like the oak leaf style. You can do leaves that have fallen on the ground. So when this layer dries, I'm actually going to go back and add more colors to it. This is kind of like my base layer for these leaves. So let them dry and then go in and do different colors. So I'm using my deep red color, my raw sienna color. If you want, you can add little bits of green in some of the leaves. You can add more orange to it. The orange and red blend very nicely together to make vibrant, bright orange-red colors. And then you want to just kind of let that dry a little bit, rinse the brush, and then do your dark. So we can do the stems of the leaves next with the dark color. So at the end of each of these, I'm just going to take this dark brown and do a stem that extends from the outside, but then it goes on the inside part of the leaf. And then you can choose to do the veins of the leaf or you don't have to, but I'm going to do white just to kind of let that kind of stand out because the leaves are kind of a dark color. So I'm going to take that white and just do these little tiny vein lines coming out from the center. Another final detail I added to this is another pumpkin on the lower right part of this to kind of balance things out, just one pumpkin. So I did the white layer, and then now I'm going back over that with the raw sienna and a little bit of orange to do the second layer, basically the same technique as the other pumpkins on the left. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint turkey on a pumpkin patch. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.